It's to all. And he continues talking about the people that Jesus had to deal with, and yet he ate with them, he went to their house, he was under their roof, he associated with them. I mean, some of the worst kind of people. In fact, the Pharisees were often saying, how come you're eating with those? I mean, why would you even associate with those people? So we need to be open to anybody and everybody of being kind and considerate. We don't have to accept their ways of life, but we need to be kind because they're human beings. And Jesus died for them as well as for us. Anyway, it's not God's purpose that that his children should shut themselves up and not be associated with anybody else. Anyway, pretty strong thoughts. You want to read next? 239, Christ's grace changes the whole man.
I'm not sure if I should. The apostle exhorts us, as he which hath called you is holy, so be ye holy in all manner of conversation. Because it is written, be ye holy, for I am holy. The grace of Christ changes the whole man, making the coarse refined, the rough gentle, the selfish generous. It controls the temper and the voice. Its outworking is seen in politeness and tender regard, shown by brother for brother in kind, angel presence is in the home. I'm sorry, I skipped a line. In kind, encouraging words and unselfish actions. An angel presence is in the home. The life breathes forth a sweet perfume, which as holy incense ascends to God. Love is manifested in kindness, gentleness, forbearance, and long-suffering. The expression of the countenance is changed. The peace of heaven is revealed. There is seen a habitual gentleness, a more than human love. Humanity becomes a partaker of divinity. Christ is honored by perfection of character. As these changes are perfected, angels break forth in rapturous song, and God and Christ rejoice over souls fashioned after the divine similitude.
All right. Interesting there. Humanity becomes a partaker of divinity. Isn't that interesting? I mean, we think of God being divine and Jesus was divine, but it says, if we are exercising what we should be doing in dealing with other people, then humanity becomes a partaker of divinity, growing in Christ. That's what that's all about. Comment.
I was just thinking, do we sometimes get mixed up between etiquette and courtesy?
There's a difference, yeah.
And we teach etiquette where we should really be teaching courtesy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. But there is a difference. Very true. Very true. All righty.
What is the difference?
Etiquette is determined by the rules that we should follow. Are we doing the right thing? As opposed to courtesy, allowing it to be a natural element of acceptance, maybe. That would be my thinking.
Okay, let's say in dining or eating, there's certain procedure etiquette-wise. When you sit down at a table and there's 5 forks, there's a procedure for how you do that and which one you use and what.
Right.
But that's not courtesy.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. The rules are the etiquette. Okay? Courtesy is dealing with individuals and people, being accepting and loving.
Is that based on your character, right? Having the character of Jesus, right?
Oh, yes, exactly.
It's showing courtesy is
right.
the same as
Mm-hmm.
the same courtesy that.
Yes, and it just comes out.
The law. Yeah. The spirit of the law.
Oh, okay. Well, Roger, if there's a bunch of forks, you start on the outside and work your way in.
I see that. I see on the movie ones.
I know that etiquette. But one fork is enough for me, no matter what they put in front of me. One fork will work.
don't even know which one goes on which side. I always get that one wrong.
All right. Oh, and they sometimes put one at the top of the plate too.
Yeah.
Careful.
Is that for the horse stewards?
No, it's for later. Yes, Michael.
I just wanted to share this because it kind of ties in what we're reading, or it impacted me. So today I was reading in Job,
Okay.
and in the very beginning of Job, God's having a meeting, and Satan shows up.
Yep.
And he says, "Where'd you come from?" And basically he implies, "Well, I came from the world you gave me,
Mm-hmm.
or the world I took, or the
Right.
world that was given to me.
Yep.
Whatever. I came from earth."
Right.
And the Lord says, "Well, have you considered Job? Because if you truly own the earth, there's at least one family on this earth that worships me and is innocent and is blameless and loves me.
Right.
Have you considered my servant Job?" And it starts, and the more I thought about that in reading this, God's always had that
Somebody here.
relationship with humanity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Even though the world has fallen,
Right.
he's always had that remnant.
Mm-hmm.
He's always had that one tie to the family that he lost, and his son redeemed us so that we could be tied with God again.
That's right. Right.
So.
Good. Very good. Yes.
Pleasant tones and correct language. We should accustom ourselves to speak in pleasant tones, to use pure, correct language and words that are kind and courteous. Kind words are as dew and gentle showers to the soul. The scripture says of Christ that grace was poured into his lips, that he might know how to speak a word in season to him that is weary. And the Lord bids us, let your speech be always with grace, that it may minister grace unto the hearers. Some with whom you are brought in contact will be rough and uncourteous, but because of this, do not be less courteous yourself. He who wishes to preserve his own self-respect must be careful not to wound needlessly the self-respect of others. This rule should be sacredly observed toward the dullest, the most blundering. What God intends to do with these apparently unpromising ones, you do not know. He has in the past accepted persons no more promising or attractive to do a great work for him. His Spirit, moving upon the heart, has aroused every faculty to vigorous action. The Lord saw in those rough, unhewn stones precious material that would stand the test of storm and heat and pressure. God sees not as man sees. He does not judge from appearances, but he searches the heart and judges righteously. Let us be self-forgetful, ever on the watch to cheer others, to lighten their burdens by acts of tender kindness and deeds of unselfish love. These thoughtful courtesies, beginning in the home and extending far beyond the home circle, go far to make up the sum of life's happiness, and the neglect of them constitutes no small share of life's wretchedness.
All right. So it's not about us. It's not about me. Other people are suffering. And if we are in our own selves suffering, don't take it out on them. Their lot may be much worse than ours, you know, and we just don't know all that. I mean, how do we measure? We don't need to measure. Anyway, so we need to be respectful of others and careful how we interact with them, to be courteous. I mean, they may be having a really bad day. And so, you know, we don't need to make it any worse. All right. Michael. Oh, okay. Dr. Kim. Starting a new chapter. So much for being courteous. Okay, we're done with that. Next one is an interesting chapter as well. Dress and adornment. I haven't had a dress on for a long, long time, but anyway. There's some interesting points here that people seem to overlook when they start jumping on others for how they look. Anyway, go ahead.
I guess we're going to open this can of worms.
It may be,
Okay.
but hopefully it'll become more clear.
Okay. Blessings of proper attire, appropriate, modest, and becoming. In dress, as in all things else, it is our privilege to honor our Creator. He desires our clothing to be not only neat and healthful, but appropriate and becoming education. We should seek to make the best of our appearance. In the tabernacle service, God specified every detail concerning the garments of those who ministered before him. Thus, we are taught that he has a preference in regard to the dress of those who serve him. Very specific were the directions given in regard to Aaron's robes, for his dress was symbolic. So the dress of Christ's followers should be symbolic. In all things, we are to be representatives of him. Our appearance in every respect should be characterized by neatness, modesty, and purity. Testimonies. By the things of nature, the flowers, the lily, Christ illustrates the beauty that heaven values, the modest grace, the simplicity, the purity, the appropriateness that would make our attire pleasing to him. Ministry of Healing. The dress and its arrangement upon the person is generally found to be the index of the man or the woman. Review and Herald. We judge of a person's character by the style of dress worn. A modest, godly woman will dress modestly. A refined taste, a cultivated mind will be revealed in the choice of a simple, appropriate attire. The one who is simple and unpretending in her dress and in her manners shows that she understands that a true woman is characterized by moral worth. How charming, how interesting is simplicity in dress, which in comeliness can be compared with the flowers of the field. Review and Herald.
All right. Don't get too excited over this chapter. Some people think dress issues are all on the woman, okay? So make that clear. This chapter is going to mention that frequently, but there are issues that men need to be aware of too, and it gets to that, some of that in here too. So we usually think about dress and attire is applicable to the woman, okay? But men can be just as proud and pretentious in what they wear as well. So all the principles need to be applied, and we're not trying to pick on Kelly and Rosie.
I took my nose ring out just before I came in.
All right, Michael.
Sound guiding principles. If the world introduced a modest, convenient, and healthful mode of dress, which is in accordance with the Bible, it will not change our relation to God or to the world to adopt such a style of dress. Christians should follow Christ and make their dress conform to God's Word. They should shun extremes. They should humbly pursue a straightforward course, irrespective of applause or of censure, and should cling to the right because of its own merits. I beg of our people to walk carefully and circumspectly before God. Follow the customs in dress so far as they conform to health principles. Let our sisters dress plainly, as many do, having the dress of good, durable material, appropriate for this age, and let not the dress question fill the mind. Our sisters should dress with simplicity. They should clothe themselves in modest apparel, with shamefulness and sobriety. Shamefacedness and sobriety. Give to the world a living illustration of the inward adorning of the grace of God.
Interesting. It starts off with modest, convenient, helpful mode. And then it says, the next paragraph, following the customs in dress. I mean, people in different countries dress differently. I mean, their attire is differently. And so it's not one size fits all. It's not everybody has to wear the same flour sack or whatever you want to call it, which is interesting. Roger?
Customs change in the U.S. too.
Yeah, that's right.
In my lifetime, we've gone from preachers wearing suits to now it's not uncommon to find a preacher wearing a suit coat, a casual shirt, and Levi's,
Yep.
and sneakers, and yet at the basketball game, the coach is wearing a suit and tie.
Mm-hmm. We're going to address preachers in just a little bit. It's a little further in here, and we're going to skip over that part. You know? But you're right. You're right. It's very, very true. All right. So having good, durable material appropriate for your age, who you are, and the age in which you live, and not let the dress question fill your mind, which I thought was an interesting reflection. You know, don't get too bent out of shape over Levi's. Although we're going to get over here to preachers and ministers and what they should be wearing, it's not going to be Levi's. Trust me, I know that one. Yes, Michael.
Well, and just one of the things that was eye-opening for me all the years with Pathfinders is on Sabbath when you
Yes.
had international camporees.
Mhm.
One country, what Sabbath dress for them is not the same as in the United States necessarily.
That's true.
It's their best, but their best may be different from what we have in mind of,
Mhm. Mhm.
of what we've been raised with.
Yep. I remember being in a church up in the mountains, and we had a man there that always wore bibbed overalls to church because that's the clothes that he had.
Mm-hmm.
But he always wore his best bibbed overalls. If he got a new pair, they were Sabbath wear for a while before they became everyday wear. And so you're right, you know, it's not a declaration of what you have to wear,
Sure.
but putting forth the best that you have to represent God's blessings to you.
Well, and there was a time too, I remember the curtains on my grandmother's bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
I also remember part of the back of those curtains being in old jeans that
Yeah.
were, she had 10 kids, so they wore their best.
Yep.
But there may be a pair of jeans that had a patch in it too.
Right.
So,
Mm-hmm. That's true. You want to keep going?
Sure.
You had a short little paragraph.
Independence and the courage to be right. Christians should not take pains to make themselves a gazing stock by dressing differently from the world. But if, when following out their conviction of duty in respect to dressing modestly and healthfully, they find themselves out of fashion, they should not change their dress in order to be like the world. They should manifest a noble independence and moral courage to be right, if all the world differ from them.
So what is right, no matter what everybody else thinks. But don't necessarily make a point to be different than somebody else. Right. Okay?
Refining the taste. Truth never makes men or women coarse or rough or uncourteous. It takes men in all their sin and commonness, separates them from the world, and refines their taste, even if they are poor and uneducated. Under Christ's discipline, a constant work of refinement goes on, sanctifying them through the truth. If they are tempted to exert one particle of influence that would lead away from Christ into the way of the world, in pride or fashion or display, they speak words of resistance that will turn aside the enemy's power. I am not my own, they say. I am bought with a price. I am a son, a daughter of God.
So it is. We need to be aware of that and reflect that in how we appear to others. Appear being what we wear, how we look, and so forth. Anyway, all right. Starting over again, I guess. Roger, you want to go again?
As I have seen many Sabbath-keeping Adventists becoming worldly in thought, conversation, and dress, my heart has been saddened. The people claim to believe that they have the last message of mercy to give to the world, are attracted by worldly fashions, make great exertions to follow them, as far as they think their profession of faith allows them to go. Worldly dress among our people is so noticeable that unbelievers frequently remark, in their dress you cannot distinguish them from the world. This we know to be true, although there are many exceptions. Those who meet the world's standards are not few in numbers. We are grieved to see that they are exerting an influence, leading others to follow their example. When I see those who have named the name of Christ aping the fashions introduced by worldlings, I have the most painful reflections. Their lack of Christ-likeness is apparent to all. In the outward adorning, there is revealed to worldlings as well as to Christians, an absence of the inward adorning, the ornament of a meek and quiet spirit, which is in the sight of God, is of great price. Can I ask a question?
Oh, yes. Do I have to answer?
In the principle of dress, is this a correct assumption? When the Israelites were God's people, and they wore jewelry, but when the Day of Atonement came, they took off their jewelry. Now, I've heard people say that as a church or as a body organization, we're living today in the Day of Atonement. And therefore, we need to dress accordingly to those standards. Is that fair or not?
It would probably be a fair statement, but I don't necessarily think it would be, what's the word I want to use? Requirements. Does that make sense? You know, relative to realizing where we live, we should be careful in how we dress, but I'm not sure we'd have to go the route of the Day of Atonement type issues. We have truth, the sanctuary sequencing and processing and so forth that went through with the Israelites, and we want to make the application to the timeline of God's church. But I'm not sure all the elements of each of those days would fall into place. Look at some of the other things that happened on the Day of Atonement, and we don't necessarily see that happening in our world in which we live. You know, there are similarities and reasons to think that they apply over different spans of time, but I'm not sure we have to follow all the restrictions of what was taking place on that specific day. How did the priests dress on that Day of Atonement? And with their official garments and stuff, does that mean we need to wear a suit all the time? I mean, there's applications that the principles are good, but not necessarily the specifics. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but we are called to be a peculiar people.
Sure.
And I assume that dress and adornment is part of that definition.
Sure, but we just read it as well, but we shouldn't become a spectacle, you know, in how we present ourselves on one side or the other, actually. Does that help? Is that a good answer or an okay answer?
What's the difference between peculiar and odd?
Spells. Yeah.
Words have different meanings at different times. To us, peculiar and odd may seem the same. But 100 years ago or more, those two words might have had uniquely different meanings. Okay? And so, you know, we have to be careful of the words that we use today when other people are listening, because they have different meanings than maybe when they were written or spoken long ago. One that pops into my mind, who also is, and I gotta be careful, is gay. You know, I'm happy as happy can be. You know, that would be a gayful experience. But in today's world, that's not what that word means. And so, you know, peculiar and odd, yes, I think there's probably some differences, but in our minds, they're somewhat run into the same vein. Does that make sense? Is that acceptable? Anyway, another comment? Are you
As a kid growing up in Berrien Springs, Michigan, on Monday night, South Bend, Indiana is 23 miles away. It was an hour earlier, or later, And the stores stayed open till 7:30 that night.
Right.
And as a kid, I can remember being in South Bend, and there were no shopping malls at that time, but people showed up in crowds. And you could oftentimes say, that person looks like a Seventh-day Adventist. Today,
It's harder to do that.
I couldn't be able to do that.
Right. Maybe we are too much like the world. Again, we need to be cautious in that we aren't eccentric in either direction, maybe. But I don't have all the answers. The principles are there.
Let's say it this way: we recognize. Name skips me. They live Mennonites. They're very recognizable.
Sure, that's true too. Yep, that is very true.
To a degree. The house that I bought in Arden, my builder had no idea he was Mennonite. Tom Overholt. And you've probably heard of the Overholt name's fairly common. But, I mean, he's a good man. But, yeah. So I would say you have to qualify that.
Okay. You want to read on?
We're at what, heart condition indicated, right?
Yes.
Okay. We warn our Christian sisters against the tendency to make their dresses according to worldly styles, thus attracting attention. The house of God is profaned by the dress of professedly Christian women of today. A fantastic dress, a display of gold chains and gaudy laces, is a certain indication of a weak head and a proud heart. In order to follow in the wake of fashion, many of our youth incur expenses which their condition in life does not justify. Children of poor parents seek to dress as do those who are wealthy. Parents tax their purses and their God-given time and strength in making and remodeling clothing to satisfy the vanity of their children. If our sisters who have abundance of means would regulate their expenditures, not in accordance with their wealth, but with regard to their responsibility to God, as wise stewards of the means entrusted to them, their example would do much to stay this evil now existing among us. Satan's tactics. Satan stands in the background, devising the fashions which lead to extravagance in the outlay of means. In forming the fashions of the day, he has a fixed purpose. He knows that the time and money which are devoted to meet the demands of fashion will not be used for higher, holier objects. Precious time is wasted in keeping pace with the ever-changing and never-satisfying fashions. No sooner is one style introduced than new styles are devised, and then, in order for fashionable persons to remain fashionable, the dress must be remodeled. Thus, professing Christians with divided hearts waste their time giving to the world nearly all their energies. This entirely unnecessary burden is taken up and willingly borne in our sisters. Half of their burdens come from an attempt to follow the fashions, yet they eagerly accept the yoke because fashions is the God they worship. They are as truly held in shackles of bondage as is the various slave, and yet they talk of dependence. They do not know the first principles of independence. They have no mind or taste or judgment of their own. Satan is wonderfully successful in infatuating minds with the ever-varying styles of dress. He knows that while the minds of women are continually filled with a feverish desire to follow fashion, their moral sensibilities are weak, and they cannot be aroused to realize their true spiritual condition. They are worldly, without God, without hope.
Okay. Interesting, what you read, 2 sections there, are moving not necessarily to what you're seeing, but the investment in making that happen. Okay? Spending money that you don't have in a direction you don't need, or even trying to revamp your whole wardrobe, to meet the flow of society and the dress of the day. And so, this is an additional concept that we need to understand. Are we making wise use of what God has given to us in support of our family and so forth? And are we putting it in the wrong direction? And as you finish up there, it says, we're working so we can make ends meet, but we're not letting the ends meet. We're using the funds to dress ourselves or whatever. And so there's a concept of the materialistic ideas of maintaining the proper attire. Yes?
I have a hard time understanding how people pay so much money to buy new jeans that are ripped and worn out.
Exactly.
I have kids and I just shake my head. What did you buy?
Exactly. But that's the way it looks right now. Very, very true. Used to, if it had a hole in it, it's time to get a new pair. Now you go get a new pair, make sure it's got a hole in it. That's very true. It doesn't make much sense. All right, we're going to stop right there. The chapter goes on quite a bit, and we'll pick that up again. But it's developing a principle and a concept that I think will continue on as we keep reading. Again, like I said, most of what we read tonight had to do with women, and ladies and the sisters and so forth. But it applies to all, and just a good blanket statement would be probably women are more moved by fashions. But I know a lot of men are too. So, that
In
doesn't.
today's world, men are just as
Yes,
vain.
exactly.
I see it at work.
Yep.
Back to work now, I'm like,
Exactly. So it doesn't necessarily apply, but it just seems that way sometimes. But the principles are all for everybody. And we need to be aware of, that we're doing the best that we can to honor God and not be trying to make a statement of what the world statement's all about. Anyway, all right. Any thoughts for prayer? Anything happening? Yes, Bob. Use the mic there so people can hear you too.
I just want to say a praise for my brother John here. I was very concerned. They went through a lot of health battles, and he wasn't getting my calls or my messages, and he told me he felt really bad when he saw that I'd been reaching out, and you guys knew I was just real concerned. But I'm grateful. I'm thankful. So.
Yep, it's good to have him back with us. Michael?
I just, for you guys, just remember prayers for the school. And there was a school board meeting last night, and all the board members were there. And we have a lot of things to discuss, but it was a very good meeting. And we finished with prayer, and I felt really good going home that we were all trying to work toward the same.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very good unified meeting, I thought. But the school board has done a lot. Our teachers have done a lot. We've got a lot of kids that we didn't plan at the beginning of the year, and a lot of them want to come back next year. So those are all good problems to have.
Right. Very true. Very true. Another praise, if you haven't had opportunity to look over the hill, the riverbank's changed a lot this week. It has really changed a lot. They put a lot of energy and effort. And interestingly enough, when they first made the comment about putting concrete and gravel and stuff in there, I was thinking, man, it's going to tear up our driveway and the yards and all this stuff. They do it all from the water side. They just drive down through the river with a backhoe and a dump truck. And I mean, it's amazing just to see them coming and going, just working. But anyway, so it's not dark yet when we get done. If you want to gaze over the hill, it's a big difference that's taking place. It's interesting how God works. We struggled for 2 years trying to say, how can we fix this? And all of a sudden, it just comes in. Anyway, yes, Kelly.
From the water. It was really good to see Mark and Debbie at church this past Sabbath.
Cool. Good.
It's good to see them. And just continued praises. The changes at work are just all from God. I'm so thankful.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a friend who's really struggling with depression. I'd just like to lift him up.
Okay.
His
All
name's Chuck.
All right. Okay. Any other thoughts to share? All right.